Live from Alachua, Florida, I'm Amrita Kaylee.
And I'm Namamrita. Welcome to Nectar Talks, from the heart of New Ramanreti, the largest Hare Krishna community in North America and the home of thousands of Bhakti Yoga practitioners.
In our ongoing interviews, we dig deep into our search for loving connections with Krishna and each other.
With you, we hope to uncover the real-life stories and inner journeys of our vibrant community of friends and special guests.
Like bees searching for nectar, we seek to extract pearls of wisdom from how they live their lives and the lessons they can impart to us and our listeners.
If you're seeking nectar, look no further.
All right, let's get started.
Welcome back, everyone, to our discovery and journey into the lives of our beautiful community of spiritual seekers, practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, devotional pioneers, and those like myself who are simply born into it and just trying to figure it out. This is Nectar Talks, episode 6. We're live from New Ramanreti. Welcome, everyone. Amrita Kaylee, my partner in crime, is still out for now. She has her new baby daughter. So forgive me if her contagious laughter and cheer is going to be missing today. I've been practicing my woohoos as best as I could. And we're going to try to keep this exciting for everyone. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started and I introduce our special guests. We've been working very hard on getting our podcast platform up and running over the last couple of days. And from what I understand, we should have Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify up and running in the next couple of days. So keep an eye out for that. It's just going to be under the banner Nectar Talks if you want to listen to us on your drive to work or via audio. And of course, you can find us on ISKCON of Alachua's YouTube and Facebook platforms. Nectar Talks Live, of course, on Facebook and YouTube as well. So I've been really looking forward to this first mother and daughter duo today. We have Mother Annapurna and Vrinda Devi. We're very excited to have them. And I've really been looking forward to this interview because first of all, it's great to spend time with you again. And there's so many topics that we can dive into, anywhere from art to your book launch, growing up in Krishna consciousness, the dynamic that you two have as mother and daughter. So I'm really looking forward to all that. Mother Annapurna, Vrinda Devi, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great. It's so exciting to be speaking to the New Ramanreti community because I've been part of it since I was 14 and came here from Sweden. And it's been one of my lifelines to be connected to this community. So it's a pleasure for me to be here with you.
Thank you. Mother Annapurna, how are you doing today?
You're muted.
Muted, perhaps.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
There you are.
Yeah,
How's everything going?
I'm doing great. I feel that spiritual life is an ever increasing bliss.
Wonderful. Let's increase it some more this evening. So, as you know, one of the reasons why we started this podcast is simply to get to know our community members. And I know that you're from Sweden, and Vrinda, you grew up there for part of your life. So perhaps we could start with just a little bit of your geographical background, your kind of family you grew up in, and how eventually you moved to Alachua and New Ramanreti. Tell us about that.
I'll let you start, Mama.
Okay, so I'm born in a little town not so far from Stockholm in Sweden, and I guess I was always one of these people who didn't want to join the rat race and live a regular life. And fortunate. I had to go through some, like being a hippie in Europe and traveling around and, doing some exploring and having some really bad experiences before I finally, I went with my friends to a music festival, outdoor music festival, where the Krishnas in Sweden did some performance, and it was like this. Some people have their spiritual life. It's like it takes step by step by step.
Uh-huh.
But for me it was like this.
What kind of performance was it?
Oh, they were sitting down in the grass and just singing the Maha Mantra.
Okay.
It was one devotee, her name was Krishna Premi.
Uh-huh. So it was kirtan, basically. You were hearing the holy name.
It was kirtan.
Yeah.
And I also got some, like my boyfriend at that time, he was very favorable. He had like the books. And I was super duper attracted to, because I'm very visual, I like pictures is a source of great inspiration in my life. So it was this Shishopanishad, the first one with Keshava Vishnu on the. Oh, wow. Yeah, this is it. This must be because,
Yeah, that's a powerful image right there.
Because, like this notion that God is a person, it was always with me. And but I was in some Bible study groups and trying to look for a way to find God in my life.
Yeah.
And when I saw this picture, and it's like, yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a God, he must be something extraordinary out of this world. And he is. So, that's why I'm still sitting here.
Yeah. Wonderful. So Vrinda, you grew up in Sweden. Tell us a little bit about that, and how old were you when did you move to the US after that directly? Or?
Well, I just want to say that this is so exciting. I've never heard my mom's joining story, or this
Really
moment. I've never heard it before. I guess that shows my self-absorption. As a daughter. So that was really fun. And Krishna Premi, of course, I grew up also with her wonderful music.
Oh, you remember her, Vrinda? You remember Krishna Premi?
I don't actually. I remember her a little bit, but I mean, yeah. I think many Gurukulis grew up with her music.
Gopali's mother.
Mata Swami, oh, may your vision always be before my eyes.
That's maybe. Krishna Premi.
Yeah, that's Krishna Premi. So
I know that song.
Yeah, that I think many Gurukulis grew up with.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, then I feel connected to her as well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, I grew up on the ISKCON farm, the Hare Krishna farm in Sweden. It's still there. It's called Alnviks Gård. It's still there. It's a beautiful farm. We had cows, and every season we were picking potatoes, and so it gave me a taste of farm life. Yeah. Also community living, communal life. My mom and I, we never had, our own house or home or kitchen or anything. We just had all our meals at the temple. We in community life, which, now living more of a regular American life in terms of having a household and a family and having our own house and car, and and that's how most people live now.
Yeah.
I definitely grew up in, the early days of the movement when everyone lived in the temple. There wasn't such a thing as living outside of the temple.
Right.
Thankfully, the farm I grew up in was really beautiful, like tons of trees, and there's a lake, and I grew up very close to nature. So that's some of the fond parts that I connect to in terms of my childhood. And then when I was 14, the community started falling apart a little bit. So I was one of the few kids that still lived on the farm, and I was aching and dying to just go to public school and be like a regular kid.
Yeah.
My dad was very against that idea. He didn't want me to be influenced in that way. So long story short, I flew when I was 14. I was put on the airplane and I flew by myself to Alachua, and Mataji, Mother Lakshmi Moni, who was running the Vaishnava Academy for Girls at the time, she came and picked me up. I had never met her before. And I started ashram life, and then I, spent ashram life. That was back in 97. So I've been connected to the Alachua community since I was 14, and that was back in 97. So it's quite a few years now.
Wow. Yeah. So you grew up immersed in the community in Sweden. And then from there, when you moved to Alachua, it was to join the ashram there.
Yes.
Awesome. I'm sure a lot of experiences came from just those two things. And there's a lot we could dive into right there. I do want to keep track of our time, and the book is a big thing that I want to get into. But if there's one thing that perhaps you wanted to share about that upbringing in Krishna consciousness, what are a couple of the things that looking back on it, you might share about that?
Well, like you said, there is so much to say. And I also resonated a lot with something that Gora Shakti said on the last episode. He was saying, growing up, it felt as if ISKCON or Krishna consciousness or our movement was the entire world. That's how we experienced it growing up. And then, becoming an adult, we realize, oh, our movement or what we're doing is, a very small part of a very vast, larger world. And then as an adult, then to find the bridge or find the ways to live in all the different roles we have to inhabit, that's been a huge learning curve for me. And I know for many Gurukulis, and probably for anyone with a body. I mean, growing into adulthood is painful for most people. But one thing that comes to mind that I thought about before coming on here was, a lot of my peers, a lot of my friends that I grew up with on the farm in Sweden, they have transitioned into, they're disconnected from the movement. They don't really, they're just not very active in it. And some of them are even, consciously keeping a distance for different reasons. And I'm one of the few that is still somehow connected, despite having apprehensions and other things but I'm still very much connected. And one of the reasons for that is because I left Sweden and I left that community, and I was plugged into the Alachua community, which is extremely, versatile, open-minded, kind of come as you are, and also has a ton of senior devotees that are so loving and do send that message, like, come as you are, participate as you can. I'm so happy you're here, rather than another message that might be less encouraging. So I do see that transition of me coming into the Alachua community as one of the reasons why I am still myself active or connected to in the way that I am.
Right. So you're saying that it was through some of the devotees here in New Raman Reiki that you felt that transition or being kind of part of both worlds was made possible for you? Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, it's actually a topic that's very dear to me. We had Mother Akuti a few episodes ago, and her prayer was that the next generations just make ISKCON better. That was her great desire, and there's so much to be done, and I really admire your approach to it. And like you said, you're still feeling connected to Krishna consciousness, and it's a wonderful thing. Mother Annapurna, what was your experience with raising Vrinda and Krishna consciousness?
Well, do you want me to be honest or polite?
I feel like I was trying to save this for the end.
Yeah,
So
maybe
somehow we
better
got,
you do that. Maybe
yeah,
that's
that's fine. Because I really was trying to just steer us into the art and the creativity. But somehow we jump right to the deep topic. So sure, let's try to come back to that a little bit later. But I think it's definitely something, if you're comfortable sharing, of course, we can get into that. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about you. And obviously, the big topic for today is that there's the third book of your trilogy, Sita's Fire, that's being released. And there it is, Destroyer of Sorrow. Yeah, so the first one was Shadows of the Sun Dynasty, which came out in 2016, and Queen of the Elements, 2017, and now Destroyer of Sorrow is coming out. And this is, from what I understand, it's a 10-year journey for both of you to have gone to this point when the trilogy is finally completed. So to get back to learning a little bit more about Mother Annapurna, tell us about your creative background, how you became an artist, and it seems like this is really your career and a big priority in your life. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? I saw on your website, you call yourself a watercolor artist and book illustrator. So is that pretty much how you would define yourself as far as your career?
Yes, as I said before, pictures have always meant a lot to me. It gives me inspirations, and watercolor is just a natural thing. And, I feel like this. I didn't become an artist. I always was an artist.
Mm-hmm.
But the first, we were pioneers in the moment, and I wasn't I didn't have an education in art, or so I just went along with what do the needful,
Okay.
What needed to be done. So I just surrendered for many years without, okay, I feel inspired, let me do this, or I would like to do, no, we lived in a temple environment, and, we had a temple authority, and that's, you do what needs to be done, and if somebody in the pujari department is sick or can't go on the altar, you just have to jump in immediately.
Uh-huh.
So, and before I joined, I was a miserable teenager trying to figure out my life. And art was also, I showed my husband a portrait I did of my grandmother in 1976, and he said, wow, this is really good. I did art for, my whole life. It was always one of my best subjects, so.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay, so from what I understand, you always had the art in you, and you always enjoyed doing it, but when you joined the temple, you didn't really have the time because you were doing the needful. So it's not like at that time in the beginning you were able to really put so much time into it. When did it become something that you were doing, perhaps on a more of a full-time basis, would you say?
I have to laugh because it wasn't until I became independent, I moved out of the temple,
Uh-huh.
that I could pursue art
Right.
to full extent.
Yeah.
And follow my own inspiration.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
But it's funny, I want to mention this since this is the Alachia community. One of the first times I visited the center in Sweden, Korsnäs Gård, one of the few devotees there, he was very kind and he spent some time with me, and he was an artist.
Mhm.
Guess who it was? It was Pushkar.
Oh, wow. Our dear Pushkar, yes, definitely a staple character here at New Raman Reiki.
Yeah. And he gave me two, you know, at that time we used cassettes, you know. So he gave me a cassette recording of Prabhupada's class and some bhajans with Prabhupada that I brought with me and listened to a lot when I got home, you know. So that's, they had a little group of artists there at Korsnäs Gård at that time.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, you know, I find it interesting that, you know, you mentioned two things that are both important, I would say. One is you were doing the needful at the time, and you actually, sounds like you put aside something that was really in you, you know, your creativity as an artist, and you didn't have so much of an opportunity to dive into it. And then at some point you did allow yourself to do that. I see both as being an amazing dedication of your devotional character. And you know, the photos that Madhuri Leela are posting here are really amazing, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about how you managed to display all your talents through this trilogy. So, Vrinda, can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind this project? How did it all come about that you're now an author on top of, you know, initially I knew you as a dancer, traveling alongside your husband with the Mayapuris. I've seen you lead some beautiful kirtans. Of course, you're a mother of three. So tell us a little bit how you got into this amazing project that started some 10 years ago.
Well, I have to point directly back to my mom, really, because, you know, the Ramayana is such a revered epic. It's so beloved in India and beyond. And so there's no way that I would have ever approached it or ever thought that I could contribute anything to it. And it just had never even crossed my mind to do anything with it. But it so happened that, you know, my mom was in Sweden and I was in US and transitioning to go to India to study dance. And it so happened that she conceived of this project as an illustrator. She already started working on it, but that project fell through, and she can tell you more about that. But then she actually asked me, well, why don't you write something? And I was completely blindsided by that. What, me? Oh, okay. And I did have a fondness for writing, but it's not like I identified as an author or thought that I had what was needed. But I did a draft and I sent it to the publisher, Adwaita Chandra Prabhu, who used to helm Torchlight, which has so many devotional books. And he loved it. He was so supportive. He loved what I wrote. And then it just started from there. And it turned into this massive project. I think originally we had just envisioned doing one book, but then when I began to generate more and more material, and when I really surrendered to the entire process, it really took on a life of its own and turned into this massive trilogy project that we're just so excited to finally be at the other end of.
Wow.
And I mean, I also have to say that it brought me into such confrontation with myself and my abilities as an author, and even just, you know, what do I stand for as a person? Very intense kind of inner stuff. And I know for sure that I even contemplated doing it even with my mom. But if my mom had not been there, I would have for sure taken the manuscript and just like thrown it in the river or burnt it and never looked at it again. You know, but I wasn't at liberty to do that because here, you know, my mom was there and she was depending on me and also believing in me and encouraging me and really seeing fanning the flame of whatever, small talent I may have. And so I really credit her for seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself, and yeah, I'm just really, really grateful because it has enriched my life so much.
Yeah.
But it's not something that I came into with intentionally, sort of.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I never would have known. When I see the trilogy, I was like, man, there must have been a lot of planning. Hey, we're gonna write this trilogy. So and at the same time, I can relate with some projects that I did where once you get started, you realize, well, if I do this, I got to do that, and it just piles on and on. I'm curious to hear a little bit about your side on this, dear mom. What was your motivation in asking Vrinda? Tell us a little bit about the spark you saw in her and why you pushed her to do this.
I always saw a spark in her from the moment she was born,
Mm-hmm.
And she was 14. Many of you who are out there, you have kids, they are 14. I have one kid
Mm-hmm.
who was like, she maybe begin to understand now when she has own kids, how much it means to a parent to have a child,
Right.
And she left when she was 14. I know she came here to Alacha. She was in the ashram. She was like protected. She did devotional activities. And so I wasn't like worried, but the separation was unbearable, because it's not like, okay, my daughter moved to another city here in Sweden. I can go and visit. I can take the train. I can take the bus or something. It's not just to hop on a train and go to America. It's a whole ocean in between there, And I mean, internet was there, but it wasn't like now we can really connect with each other through internet. It wasn't so much like developed at that time. So I was just very sad that my daughter, that we had to send her to all the way to, because she needed to have challenges for her to live on a farm with no friends. It wasn't enough challenges for her. She was bored. And the danger when you are bored, if you're a young person, you're curious, you want to find out. And even in the little town nearby where the farm is, there are drugs and discos and, so me and Vrinda's dad, we did this to protect her, to send her there.
Right.
I would have wanted to, but at the same time, it like, although I saw a spark in her, when children are small, you are like almost like a god to them. They loved you so much, and it was the same. I had such a beautiful memories of Vrinda as a child because she was so beautiful. She was my, like, what you call it, like everything.
Right.
And then they become like growing up into their own personalities, it's like they become teenagers.
The terrible teens.
And I was when I joined, I was kind of a little bit come from a dark place and joined, and my life was like formed, and my spiritual life, like the foundation, became devotion to Krishna. And to be honest, I had no clue how to deal with a teenage daughter. I didn't know what to do.
Right.
So in that sense, I guess it was a blessing that, although it was very painful with the separation, but maybe it was something already there, because now we have a close connection and we have worked through lots of things. And I feel, Vrinda, I love you so much. I think you're such an amazing person. And I'm so happy that we live close, because Bill, when she left when she was 14, it wasn't until I moved here to Alachia 7 years ago. That's like 15 years. We hardly saw each other.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize it was so long. Well, thank you for, sharing such intimate feelings and history between the two of you. I mean, I really appreciate you both opening about that. So at some point you launch on this journey of so you had, from what I understand, you had art already.
Yeah, I already had my
the
pieces of art. What do I do with this? Because
right.
At that time, Harikesh was my spiritual master. I was initiated during the Sonal Acharya system, and he had started a project to help grihastas and schools, and he wanted to produce children's books. So that's how I started to become more involved in art.
Okay.
But I mean, that's the whole history, what happened in Sweden and Europe.
Yeah. No, I'm just trying to follow along with how the book came about. So you had the art, and then you needed a writer.
I had the art, and I needed somebody to write the manuscript. It's a little backward. Usually you have a manuscript and then you go from there. But since I'm not a writer, and I could perceive that Vrinda already then had like a gift for expressing herself with words, writing her essays in school and everything like that. So I don't know, I just got this, I think a lot of my life is it's more like intuition, and it's not so much like thinking through things. It's more spontaneous and intuition. So I thought it would be a great way for her and me to be connected. She over here in America, me in Sweden, and then she went all the way to India for 5 years studying classical Indian dance. That's when she started to write the first drafts.
Right. Great. So once you got launched into the writing, thanks to your mother's encouragement, Vrinda, tell us a little bit about that whole writing process. I mean, to me, it's fascinating. The Ramayana is, like you mentioned in the beginning, this is one of the most famous epics of India. It's known throughout the world. I mean, you see it in probably every Indian restaurant. A lot of people know about the Ramayana. And you engaged on a journey to rewrite it. Tell us a little bit about your approach to this epic. What was your intention, and perhaps some of the influences in your own life that guided you in this writing?
Yeah. Well, so initially I wrote it just from memory, because, when I grew up in a very strict environment where we didn't watch movies, or we didn't have access to cartoons and things like that. Only when I went to my grandmother's, I would beg to watch Tom and Jerry or Donald Duck, but it wasn't.
It's always our grandmas that they're the leads, I got to tell you.
Yes, absolutely. So I got a little bit of that, but it wasn't something that I had much of. But what my surrounding really exposed me to was, of course, all the Vedic stories and Mahabharata, Ramayana, all the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam stories. So those things made a very deep impression on me. And I did, on rainy days, we were allowed to watch these devotional Bollywood films.
Mhm.
So the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, that was really kind of the background. That was the stories that I was steeped in as a child. So in that sense, it was a smooth and easy entry point for me to start retelling the story.
Right.
And really, as the years went by and I started realizing so many things. For one thing, for example, is that the Ramayana has a really huge storytelling tradition. It's been told and retold. Originally, of course, it was an oral story, and then it was written down by Valmiki first, but it has so many different versions. Even in India, it has over 200 different regional versions. And then now when it's being retold in English, now we're seeing so many English retellings. So it just has this really rich storytelling tradition. And that affirmed me a lot. I realized that I wasn't just kind of doing something not bona fide. I
Right.
was actually participating in a long-standing tradition, which is to retell the story for your particular audience. So that relieved some of, my inner anxiety about what I was doing. And another really huge eye-opener for me was that I even came to the entire end of writing the manuscripts for all 3 books, really. And it was only then that I realized that I had written it to belong to the male characters. It starts with Dasharath, and then Ram and Lakshman, and then Hanuman and Ravan, and Vibhishan, and there's just so many really rich male characters whom I love and adore, and they're very fascinating. But for me, I really came away from that and said, wait a minute, I mean, where is Sita? Where is Kaushalya? Where is Kaikeyi? Where is even Surpanak, who is such a pivotal character? She does change the trajectory of the heroes and the tale for all time. And so I just really confronted my own assumption that, this story belongs to the male characters. And for me, that just was very incomplete. And that's when I had my biggest sort of aha moment, where I realized, oh my God, I do have something to contribute to this storytelling tradition that is unique. And
Yes.
It's also in this time, we are in a kind of time of reckoning where minority voices and women
Right.
are
Absolutely.
so, I mean, obviously I am part of that uprising too. So it's, again, so I'm also fitting into a certain time.
What perfect timing when it comes to that. I mean, not only is it important, but it's perfect timing, like you said.
Yeah, and it's also
that's wonderful.
not an artificial thing. It's not like I'm trying to fit into a certain moment. Okay, mommy, can you mute yourself if you're... So that's my daughter. Hi, Naimi. Hi, everyone.
Naimi.
So this is my beautiful girl.
That's sweet.
She has a sleepover tonight.
She is with grandma doing all sorts of
that's the best
things.
Don't watch too many Bollywood movies. You'll end up having to write a whole epic about it. Yeah, so you had this aha moment that you could basically retell the Ramayana and really put that emphasis on the female perspective that hadn't been done before.
Right. Yeah.
So tell us, how did you actually implement that? What was did you come up with some techniques on how you would do that, or did you use any references?
Yeah, no, that's, I think, anyone who knows or loves the Ramayana is always going to ask or be concerned with, the term for it would be, text fidelity. How much allegiance to the original text, where do I diverge? Do I diverge? That is going to be a concern for anyone who, knows the Ramayana. And I'm very aware of that and attentive to that. So I'll just quickly give an example of my process that explains sort of, how I did some of the work for the female characters.
Uh-huh.
So I like to just bring the example of the two powerful queens of in book one. It's set in the Sun Dynasty, Shadows of the Sun Dynasty. So it's really set in the palace and the palace intrigues and the interpersonal dynamics. So we have these two queens, Queen Koshalya, Ram's mother, and then Queen Kaikeyi, who is the king's favorite queen. And so that dynamic there, Koshalya is a senior queen, so she'll have a lot of power, but then because Kaikeyi was the favorite, then she'll also have her own power. And obviously they're rivals in a way that I think can be somewhat hard for us to understand these days, because it's not so common for men to have two or more wives anymore, though it happens.
Right.
But so then I took what we know about these two powerful queens from the story itself. It said, that they were bitter rivals. And then there are a couple of traits. There's not much about them, but a couple of traits of their characters are established. And so I base any of the dialogues, any of the things that they think or feel should resonate with what we know about them as characters. And then there was one line in the Valmiki Ramayana itself that stated that the king would have to go to this place called the Krodha Bhavan, the house of wrath, or this place of anger, where you went to release your anger. And, because we can see even now the royal family in different countries, they're under scrutiny at all times. So they're under a lot of pressure to perform perfection at all moments. So that was true even back then. And so they had a place to go where it was safe for them to just unravel and be crazy and release everything, which is just such a cool concept. But so it's said that King Dashrath had to go there to mediate between these two wives. And then it doesn't say anything more. I mean, we're not part of nothing more is given.
Okay.
But then my process was then to look at, okay, these are the two queens, this is what's going on,
right?
And then, this is a scene that happened. And then I created that entire scene. I brought them into that space and have them speak their grievances, and to the best of my ability imagine what would this conversation between these two powerful women, what would it look like. And so there is a chapter in Shadows of the Sun Dynasty called the House of Wrath, when the two of them confront each other. So it's really, for me, my hope is that anyone who loves the Ramayana reads this and goes, yes, this seems very plausible. This resonates. This feels like it could have happened. And at the same time, for someone who doesn't know the story, can read it and say, oh, whoa, these two women, wow, this is an exciting scene to read. So I really put my intelligence to make it accessible to both the connoisseurs and the newcomers. So that was my, really my double goal in the entire project.
Yeah. So to stick to the story and then kind of fill in the gaps, basically, in some parts that just aren't there in the original text. That's wonderful. We had talked about you perhaps reading a passage or two. Do you have that? Is now a good time to
do we
perhaps
have
hear
time,
that?
Do we have time for that, or?
I think we're going to be going a little bit over our 60-minute target, but that's okay. I would like, if you have it and it's not too long, it'd be nice to hear, to just kind of demonstrate what you just talked about.
Okay. So in 2016, when we launched Shadows, we actually enacted this scene for the community. I played the role of Kaikeyi, and Annapurna, she did the role of Koshalya. So I actually thought I would share another part, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. And by the way, I was there for that book launch, and it was really amazing. And I was actually going to ask you if you have any plans for any, of course it's the pandemic right now, but is that something that are in the plans in the future to have some more theater reenactments, or perhaps even an audio book, which I think would be amazing?
Well, I have the audiobook is available on Audible for
Oh,
book
it is. Oh, okay,
only
great,
for book
great.
one. I narrated it myself, but it's
Okay.
available on Audible for anybody who's too busy to read. I know it's a really thick book, but it is available on Audible, and I have it on my to-do list to do the other two. So in terms of audio, yes, that's certainly in the plans. And just bigger productions it takes so much energy and finances, and just it takes an incredible amount of work to put something like that on. So right now there's no concrete plan, but I would love to, and I know Annapurna loves to, and our entire music team, we did live music. We would love to do that again, but that's more.
Bhaktiland.com, everybody. If you want more shows, go to bhaktiland.com.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nama. Yeah, that we only were able to put that together because of Bhaktiland support. You're right.
Yeah, no, that's a really nice platform that you guys created for devotional art. All right, let's hear it. I'm looking forward to this.
So another way I also like to explain my process is by highlighting, what I kind of call iconic scenes from the Ramayana. So an iconic scene from book one is this moment where Manthara comes in and whispers to Kaikeyi and turns her mind against the whole kingdom. That's a very well-known iconic scene.
Right.
And that informs my entire, storytelling structure so much. And so here in book two, Queen of the Elements, the iconic scene that is, for me, one of the standout scenes, and also one that anyone who knows the story will know very well, it's this moment when Sita and Lakshman are alone together in the hermitage, in the ashram, and Sita hears Ram's voice, hearing his voice calling out in distress, and she begins to unravel, and she wants Lakshman to go and help, and he refuses, and then they have a confrontation, an interpersonal crisis, basically. And so that's a really important scene. And the way that I received that particular scene, growing up with the story and hearing it told, what I usually hear is like, oh, Sita is acting kind of just like a hysterical woman. And here we go again, these sentimental women, they just kind of go crazy when they're under crisis. I'm simplifying it, I'm paraphrasing it in maybe an exaggerated way, but that was basically the mood of it. Like, oh, she's just for no reason, going into these crazy accusations towards Lakshman.
Yeah.
And what I know about just people and also character building in a story is that when a character does something, it cannot be out of character. It has to be in line with what we know, and everyone does something for a reason. So the fact that she went to that very dark place in that moment, accusing Lakshman of desiring her, very intense accusation, there was a reason for it. There was a reason why she came to that dark place in her mind. So knowing what they said to each other in that moment and how they interacted in that moment, then I go backwards and then just wonder, how did they get to that place? There is a reason, so I want to read just a little bit up from Sita's perspective.
Okay.
That it's a small, throughout the book, I try to really pepper it with these kind of inner thoughts and how we got here, but this is an example of one. This is before it happens.
Okay.
So Ram has gone to confront a whole contingent of demons, and Lakshman and Sita are hiding in a cave. So it's just the two of them alone in a cave. And so Ram told us to wait here until his signal, Lakshman said in a firm tone. His brother was his king. He would follow his brother's order if it meant sitting in that cave the rest of our lives. I, on the other hand, could not bear to sit there for another moment. All I could feel in Lakshman's presence was his veiled heart, the way I was shut out from it. He never, ever allowed me to see his true feelings, and this made me uneasy around him, as if a secret stood between us. After 10 years together, the silence between us had only grown. I trusted Lakshman with my life, but not with my heart. In barring me from his, we had lost opportunity to be actual friends. Although my heart was not closed to Lakshman, it found no sustenance in our connection. The flower of love between us was there only because we both loved Ram. I had no idea what Lakshman's thoughts were regarding our relationship. How could I? He was determined not to share his true feelings or thoughts with me. That's why we could not coexist without Ram. He was our fort, the one who knew us both. Without Ram, Lakshman and I were like two creatures in a vast ocean, living in the same environment, but as disconnected as two sea anemones. And so she decides to leave the cave and not wait for Ram to come and bring them.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just a small insight into how Sita would have felt, Lakshman being very guarded with her. And so she experienced that there was some sort of secret between them. And then
Right.
when she is in this crisis, of course, she fills in her worst assumption, what that wall could have been. And I also explore Lakshman's reason for holding that wall. I also explore, why would he have held himself in reserve towards her? I also explore that.
Right.
That was just a little.
Well, I want to thank you, for both of you for embarking on this amazing journey. And I think to me, it sounds like this is a devotional practice, just along one's daily sadhana or however we practice or seek, our connection with God. I can imagine that this has been a very meaningful and, deepening experience for both of you. I mean, not only the amount of time you've put into it over 10 years, but just, the research, the concentration, the soul searching, the, wanting to do it with honor and respect and, sticking to the boundaries of not only the tradition, but being true to the story. So thank you so much. What are some, and I'm going to steal something right out of your Wisdom of the Sages interview here. You talked a little bit about your issues with Lord Ram, and I find that to be a fascinating topic because, first of all, it shows that, you have a genuine relationship with this person, Krishna or the Lord in his incarnation is Ram, and you have issues with it, and you mentioned, and to share a little bit about that. I'm just fascinated by this real connection that is there through that, and also I would love to hear a little bit about where you're at with that. What is the issue that you had, and just tell us a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, so growing up, my favorite pastimes or my favorite stories was definitely the Mahabharata. I loved Bhima particularly, but the Ramayana always had a little bit of distance, and as I grew into adulthood, I've heard it said by many friends, there is a kind of apprehension with Ram, particularly because he's praised as the perfect man, the perfect king, and then when you read the story or when you know the story, then you see some of his actions don't align with what we think of as a perfect man, a perfect king, a perfect husband, a perfect father. He he does some very brutal things to the ones that need him the most or deserve his protection the most. So I was very aware of that going into the story, and I really kind of wanted to avoid Ram as much as possible. Like I mentioned earlier, I entered the story writing through Dasharath's perspective. That's kind of easy, he just loves his son, and that's something very relatable. But at some point in my writing process, I realized that for me to really tell this story, to really go deep into the story, I had to work on my relationship with Ram. I had to confront all that hard stuff and really look at it and really be in discovery with it, open myself up to how did this happen? Why did this happen? And even now that the story is done, I don't feel like I have answers. I'm still in the discovery, but there are a couple of things I can share that have soothed my heart.
Yeah.
And one of them was when I actually went back and started reading the Valmiki Ramayana for myself. See, in the Valmiki Ramayana, the Lord Ram is not omniscient. He's embodying and living as a human being, and we see him going the real depths of human suffering. Like, he goes into a deep depression, and he has so many really dark moments and dark feelings, and he himself, you can see in the text, is in this constant sort of battle with himself, in a way, this self recrimination, where he is battling with himself, that is so relatable. In other words, he's not always at peace with his own actions either. And it's in later traditions, like in Tulsidas Ramcharitmanas, they, because each poet is going to bring something to it, and it is in that story that Ram becomes omniscient. So he becomes more of, the Leela thing, where things are happening and he's just has a playful smile and is unaffected by all the human madness.
Right.
But the problem with that is, if he's omniscient, then it's a little harder to understand and forgive if he errs, or if he does has that human tendency to take a misstep.
Right.
If he really is omniscient, then I expect more of someone who's omniscient. I have less forgiveness. Oh, you're God, you should be perfect. You should, there is much more expectation. But when I was able to see Ram's humanity and his struggles, then I felt a much stronger personal connection. And in terms of this episode, this intense episode when Ram has rescued Sita, and then she comes, and you expect this moment, the happy reunion, that they run into each other's arms and they're united and finally they get to be together. And the entire text is kind of leading up to this union. But what then happens is he rejects her and says, very brutally, and that's super painful for.
Right.
But in the story itself, in Valmiki Ramayana, there's a line that really soothed me. And Valmiki writes, he said, Ram turned away from Sita the way a man with an eye disease turns away from the light. So that to me was like, okay, look, Valmiki himself is saying that Ram is acting like a man with an eye disease. Sita is the light. Yeah. Ram is turning away from that in that moment. So what he did in that moment was not right. It's not what every man should then follow. That was a mistake. To doubt Sita in that moment and to treat her in that way was not right.
Yeah.
So the original text itself, and also all the people there, Lakshman, Hanuman, everyone is like, Ram, no, why are you doing this? Why is this happening? No one was comfortable with that. And I think that's really important to remember. It's not like at that moment people were saying Ram is doing the right thing and this is the way we should all be. At that moment, everyone in the story is battling, is feeling very troubled.
Right.
So seeing it in that way brings an entire different context to approach that moment and to see what was happening at that moment. And for me, that changes everything.
Absolutely. And, you know, this is the first time I've ever grasped that perspective, and, you know, most likely a reality. So thank you. And I think it just adds to the beauty of, you know, how Krishna does incarnate and take on these avatar positions where he, you know, whether he's accepting to take his father's shoes on his head, or drive the chariot of his friend, or in this case be so human that it seems like he's not being an example. To me, that just adds to the beauty of this multifaceted diamond that is Lord Ramchandra. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to take this moment to read some of the comments. There's a few comments coming in here, and I encourage anybody who's on the live broadcast here to feel free to share some comments. And if you're on Zoom, just let us know, and you're welcome to ask a question to Vrinda and Annapurna live. Sundari says, Mantara's position as a woman who had a disability was very well researched and presented very thoughtfully. When we were young, she was presented as this villainous voice in Kaikeyi's ear. I really appreciated how this woman who have been shunned, or who would have been shunned or killed back in that age, was able to create a need of herself and thus a place for herself in society. We're all molded by experiences, and many of us have pieces of ourselves warped. I was immediately more compassionate and understanding that she was not just an evil person, but one who loved the queen she served and who cared for her. Thank you, Vrinda, she says. That's you really did do some amazing research in these different characters. And, you know, like, I love this example of the disability. You know, you went and, you know, what does it mean to be a hunchback? What is it like to live in that condition? And you were able to give us so much insight thanks to that. Amrita Kelly says, oh, Amrita Kelly, I guess she is here in the background. Your technique of filling in the storyline has the fascinating ability to connect us much closer to these personalities as deep feeling beings. It's such a spectacular divergence of art, study, and humanity, and your personal devotion. Your example of Sita and Lakshman's relationship is profound. I suspect this trilogy will be very carefully studied and appreciated by religious scholars, among others, as one of the most significant contributions to the Ramayan storytelling tradition. Wow, thank you both.
Wow, thank you, Amrita Kelly.
So, you know, we are getting close to our time here. So perhaps I want to bring the two of you back together, the mother-daughter duo, and perhaps you could share, you know, now that you've finally completed this amazing work, what are some feelings, thoughts, realizations that you have as a mother-daughter couple, and just what this work meant to you? You would like to share something about that, Mother Annapurna?
Feelings, thoughts, reflections about our mother and daughter relationship and this project.
After having done this work together, what has that done for you two?
That's a good question. I haven't reflected so much about it. I'm more in the process of looking forward to the other projects we are working on.
Mm-hmm. Great. You want to share some what do you call those? Teasers on what's to come?
Well, I'm surprised to hear that, because the last thing I heard, I have an idea, and I asked, my mom, and she was like, I think you should find another illustrator, because, she found it a little stressful at times to produce art in a deadline, and especially I guess with me, sometimes it takes unexpected turns, so she was really on her tiptoes at times, so she's like on vacation mode now.
Yeah.
By the way,
there you go.
vacation mode, I mean, she's continuing to produce like really awesome Ramayan themed. Now she's doing it just for fun, because I was like, wait, I thought you were on vacation. And she's like, well, now I'm doing it just for fun. But with the deadlines and also having to match it to what I'm writing, there was a certain pressure there that she is really happy to be rid of. So
Right.
I didn't really know that you wanted to go on to our next project just yet.
Well, what are some of the, I'd like to know just a little bit more about your art, actually, Mother Annapurna. What are some of the other books that you've illustrated, and where can we find those?
Other books I have illustrated.
Or just your art in general? Is there a website where we can see all of it?
Yeah, it's coming out. I'm putting up a website with a print shop where people can buy prints.
Okay.
I'm waiting for prints from my printer, so it's coming most likely next week. It will be up, and the address will be Anna's Art 108 at 108.com.
Okay.
Peaceable Forest. Peaceable Forest.
Yeah, other books. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. My mind has gone on vacation. Sorry. I did.
Bring Len in. You can answer the question, Len.
Yeah, I did one book with my dear friend Kosha, The Peaceable Forest.
Yes, The Peaceable Forest. That's a wonderful book.
Yeah, and I actually approached Namamrita for this because I wanted him to be, I needed some shots from a model for some of the characters in The Peaceable Forest. Yeah,
that's right. I got to pose as Narada Muni thanks to you. That was a very special service.
Yeah.
That was fun.
And Vish, my husband, was Mrigari.
Vish was Mugrari the hunter. So yeah, please check out Annapurna's art on this website coming up. Peaceable Forest is one of the other books. Thank you for sharing that. And Vrinda, tell us a little bit, looking back, are there any, what are your feelings now that you've completed this project?
I feel finally, now that I'm complete, I feel like I understood what the project was and what I was meant to do. When I was in the process, it was just a lot of digesting, and following creativity is like, a very intuitive process that I couldn't articulate. But now that I'm complete and, it's out of my hands, it's, it has a life of its own. Now I feel like I'm able to really look and see what I did and what, speak about it in a confident way. And that feels, I have a little bit of distance. And so I'm able to really stand behind it in a different way than I could with book 1 and 2. So now I feel like a sense of completion that also feels celebratory, but also a lot of clarity.
Yeah. Great. Well, I really want to thank both of you. My takeaways here and getting to know you both a little more and hearing about this work is that Mother Annapurna, you joined the movement, and it was just like flipping a switch, and you just you had it in you from long ago, and that was really nice to hear how you came to the movement. Vrinda, thank you for sharing some of your upbringing in Krishna consciousness. Of course, there's so much to unpack there, and we don't have so much time. But you've opened a window into that, and I really appreciate that. I love to hear how the two of you have gone through this journey together, and thank you for all the insights through the work that you've both done and you keep doing. To me, it's really a beautiful example of how bhakti can be expressed and practiced, and the journey goes on, and we're all looking for that original love through it. So I really appreciate the time. Next episode, we are going to have Nandana from the Krishna House. That's going to be an exciting interview based on her service there and where she's coming from. So check us out. We're shooting for the first Wednesday of every month, but you can always find us on Facebook. If you click on Nectar Talks Live, you can get reminders. And thank you for those who are live with us on Zoom. Len, Amrita Kelly, Sundari, those who are Mother Vegavati. I see some comments there. Luz Maria, a lot of nice comments there on Facebook for you guys to check out. So thank you again for your time, and we'll see everybody back for the next episode.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank you for
It's been a
having
pleasure.
us.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Of course, Vrinda's taking us out with a kirtan. Thanks for that, Vrinda. Vivo!